thank you. Hello to everyone that has joined us already. It is 11 o'clock. It's almost the end of February already. I know it's a shorter month, but there's still loads for us to talk about, isn't there, Andy? Social media updates. Luan and Andy, I think many of you have been on this session before. So actually, we've got so much to talk about today in terms of data and updates. I'm going to skip introductions and we'll just add our links in the chat afterwards. But to say to you that it is 1 month until the next Lighthouse Social Summit. I know many of you have received an email this morning and have been registering, so thank you for that. But that will be our next session next month that Andy and I do our live updates, but also it's part of a bigger event where we have talks from Jerry Angrave, who will be talking about customer journey mapping and giving you tips on how to run workshops with your colleagues to map customer journey and the kind of content that you might need on social media throughout. We have Tim Hughes, who will be talking about social selling. He has just released the 2nd edition of his book on the topic, and it is brilliant. We will also have Janet Bebb, who will be talking about advertising on social media. Many of you ask me for that topic all of the time, and just wondering if she's joined yet. Chloe Ambrose will be running a session on creativity and how to unlock your creativity and create, produce amazing things. So very excited about next month. We've still got people joining, Andy, but let's join in. Do you want to do the?
Yeah.
I need to make you co-host, don't I? Give you some.
That'd be cool.
Some power.
Might need to do a little bit of muting if you don't mind, Luan, just while people are joining. That would be cool. Lovely to see some names and faces I recognize. So hello and good morning. Right, lots to cover today, lots to cover. So as Luan said, we're going to dive straight into it. As per usual, we're just going to start with some trends and some data because Luan and my favorite social media report came out. When was that?
Yes.
It was January, I think, was. So
2 weeks ago, I think.
Cool, perfect. Yeah, perfect timing. So I think this is a quarterly report, right, Luan?
Yeah, it's kind of a big annual update. And then, with every country, I think was released in the last few days, a big annual update and then quarterly kind of refresh. Nice.
Well, this is the big annual one. So this is the stuff that has some real killer data in it. So there's 300 slides. Basically, you don't need to know all of that. So fortunately, Luan and I have done the hard work of reading through it and trying to distill the things that you actually need to know. So from this slide, this is always really interesting, is like high level mind-blowing statistics. One, because now we've just passed, since the last report, we're now past 8 billion people in the world, which is insane in its own right, but we won't go into the dynamics of what that actually means. But the interesting thing is that, active social media users, which is the one that we focus on for the course of this, now 60% pretty much of the world's population, basically 4.8 billion people. Now we're at a point where pretty much active social media users, so people that log in at least once a month, is pretty much the same on par with all internet users. So social media can't really grow much more than it has, or than it can do right now. And that kind of goes to show, it's kind of reflected, that point's reflected in how we've seen the annual growth go, because, not only is it still growing quickly, but naturally the growth rates of active social media use is slowing, because we're getting to a point of pretty much total ubiquity of anyone that has access to the internet and is of, basically teen and adult age, already has access to social media, and they're using it every single month. So 137 million new people join social media networks. And as you can see over the course of the last few years, you can see how active social media users have grown. And we had hypothesized that post-pandemic, we would have seen that growth. We would have seen that kind of plateau a bit, but we really haven't. Only now at the point where we've, like I said, reached pretty much total ubiquity of everyone having access to social media and pretty much using it on a monthly basis. It really is second to none in terms of a technology that connects us all globally across the world. And the growth is frankly staggering. I don't know if, Luan, you have any take on this before we move on.
All I would say is that if anyone is interested in data, and hopefully you will be and need some data for presentations at some point in time, I've put the source into the chat already. Please do use the chat. I've also spent some time, Andy, and I would recommend this if as I said, if you do like data, all the reports from previous years are on the website as well. So I took this year's and then I went back over previous years to try and work out what the differences were and how things had changed as well. And yeah, you're right. You know, there was lots of predictions and thoughts around pandemic and post-pandemic. Yes, I do think it accelerated growth slightly, but you know, it just continues to grow. But there's lots of other data in here around overall growth, but actually maybe not overall time changing. So actually there's a lot of user nuances within this data set.
Cool. So how's that then break down across multiple different social platforms? Yes, social media is growing, lots of people using it, yada, yada. But where are they going? Where are they spending the time? So we're going to look firstly at the most used social platforms, which is always interesting. And then we'll look at the time spent on each of those platforms, which is obviously very interesting for other reasons, which we'll go into in a second. So despite, you know, lots of media reports of Facebook and, you know, crises that are happening there and, you know, missing revenue expectations, all of that noise, what that hasn't changed is Facebook's growth trajectory, nearly hitting record numbers of users, nearly 3 billion people just using Facebook alone, so 40% of the world's population. So Facebook is not going anywhere anytime soon. Similar story with YouTube. We call it out every time we look at this data. YouTube is still hugely significant, and over the last year has grown 500 million users, which is frankly staggering. Still represents an incredible opportunity to grow our brands. We're going to talk more about some YouTube updates slightly later on today, but I'm incredibly bullish on YouTube's potential, especially for like smaller businesses as well. The rest of this data, I don't think there's many huge surprises. TikTok's growth has slowed a little bit. Nothing really we need to read into that because it's not going away anytime soon. But naturally, anything that goes viral and grows as quickly as TikTok has will naturally hit some form of plateau at some point. But I think something to call out, however, is like Snapchat and Twitter continue to grow at really good rates, despite, once again, kind of the media reports, which make you think that there's a bigger crisis at hand. Like, you know, media were all over Facebook a couple of months ago after they kind of missed revenue expectations for the first time and said, oh, it's the death of Facebook. It's not going anywhere. Same with Twitter. Despite the whole debacle that's unfolded, they've still grown at a phenomenal rate. So yeah, I don't think there's many huge surprises in here, but like I said earlier, like growth is just continuing across all of the different platforms. But Luan, again.
Yeah, there is one. It hasn't appeared as a comment yet, but it usually does. LinkedIn is not shown on here. This is because LinkedIn do not report on monthly active users in the same way as the other platforms do. But I do believe that their similar figure that we can find out is about 300 million. So it would be slightly off the page in this because it is global and because of, you know, the nature of LinkedIn is slightly more niche than perhaps some of the others on here.
Yeah, really good call out. Like I said, we talk about time spent. So again, we would have thought post-pandemic time spent would have reduced. In fact, it's gone the other way. It's increased. We're all spending, you know, more people across the world spending more time on social media, and there's more of them. So honestly, like Luan, you touched on this a second ago, if you're still, and hopefully you're not, trying to help other members of a business or clients to appreciate how impactful social media is, I think these two charts pretty much do it, because really our media consumption habits have shifted dramatically. And I've got a slide on this in a second. Because naturally we're not necessarily spending more time of our day on social media. It's actually coming away from other things that we have typically done, like watching TV. We're just using our entertainment time actually for something else, for social media in particular. But why this is important for us as small businesses, business owners, marketers, etc., because the more time people spend on the platform means the more chance of our content being seen. So naturally, we will typically see higher organic growth for our content on those platforms where users typically spend the most amount of time, right? Because the more time a user spends on it, the more real estate they have in their feed to see more content. So that's typically the way it works. I don't think there's any surprises here. Although, surprise for me, actually, Facebook is much higher than I thought it was. I don't know, Luan, what's your view?
I think if we took this slide to look at the nature of the content on the platform, we've obviously got video content of the top 2 platforms, and Facebook is a bit of a mixture. You know, there is some video content on there, but I would take a good guess that the reason for spending so long on there would be groups, because what I value most about Facebook is, yes, I do value my friends and family and the posts that they do as updates. I'm not dissing that at all, but the value of groups, and whether it's my local community, what's going on, whether it's peer-to-peer groups, I probably do actually spend time in there because I'm reading and looking at things. So if we were to break that down, I would guess that's why Facebook is still quite high.
It's a fair point. But yeah, I don't think any surprises about the top 2 where people are spending the most amount of time.
No.
That's sure.
And possibly not intentional to spend that amount of time on the top 2 either.
Exactly that. So looking at social media platform audience overlaps. Now, it is probably the nerdiest slide out of everything we'll show, but that probably goes to say something more about Luan and myself than anything else, right? Because
I have visualized these, Andy. I will share them with you. I've been drawing from these charts.
You're good. Yeah, I like your visualizations of these because it's a lot more easy to understand than this is. So let me break this down. The top level message that's coming out of this is that an increasingly small amount of users are unique to one social media platform. Yeah. So that's the overall message. More people using social media for more time, but they're also using more platforms, right? So they're the kind of 3 core takeaway messages so far. So what that means then is that if we're going to utilize this data to build our strategies and plans, thinking multi-channel is a good approach to think. And this helps us plan for those other platforms that we might want to bring into our mix. So whilst I don't advocate, because it's not practical of us like being everywhere, I still, you know, a lot of these views on how to manage strategies are very personal. For me personally, I major on one platform, but then repurpose the content to multiple others to maximize the reach of it. Not everyone likes that kind of approach, and that's okay. But, you know, we all have our different ways of doing it. Yeah. But the key thing here is that, let's just say, for example, Luan and myself, you know, our primary platform is LinkedIn. I think that's fair to say, Luan, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So for something like this, it helps us think, all right, so if we want to expand our impact, because, you know, our typical audience is on LinkedIn because, you know, we talk typically from like a B2B orientated perspective. So where else are those LinkedIn users spending time? According to this data, 86% of LinkedIn users are also using Facebook, 75% also using YouTube, 82% on Insta, and over 50% using TikTok. So if we want to think about actually, you know, our LinkedIn audience, we shouldn't be thinking or closing our mind off to think, oh, our LinkedIn audience are only on LinkedIn. They're typically using other platforms too. So thinking about how this data can impact our strategy is quite a useful way to use this data. But yeah, Luan, again, really interesting take on this.
So I've used this slide and the visualizations of it this week for a conversation, but I've used it in conjunction with, there's another slide in the deck around the purpose of each platform and what people are using it for. And if you use the 2 alongside each other, yes, this is about kind of where you'll find your audience, but also off the top of my head, you know, LinkedIn is not used for messaging friends and family. Facebook is. TikTok is used for entertainment and funny content. LinkedIn isn't. So it's about combining these data sets alongside your purpose, your goals, your audience persona to work out what's best for you. But I would also say the reason that I use this slide and this data was to support a conversation about, oh, we want to do everything and we want to do everything everywhere. And as Simon Kemp, who puts this data together, did in his own presentation video, he actually, you know, highlighted TikTok has only got 0.1% unique users. So if you're panicking about not being on TikTok and thinking that you need to be on TikTok, don't over panic it, because you will find your audience on the other platforms, not necessarily for the same purposes, but you're not missing out on your audience necessarily. So take these slides and pull the data together for what reasons you may need to.
Yeah, it's a really nice way to think about it from the other end of the spectrum as well. So always lots of different ways to look at data, but that's
Yeah.
such sound advice. So totally agree with that, Luan. Right, trends, media consumption. Sorry if you need to squint at this chart. Hopefully your eyesight is better than mine. What this is telling you, and it's the kind of like the light purple. This bit, hopefully I'll hover my mouse over it. This light purple piece is the social media piece, and this is the interesting thing. So in different markets across different demographics, increasingly our media consumption habits have orientated around traditional TV. No surprise there. That's what people spend most of their time, most times consuming the media on. So typically on TV, but increasingly across different demographics, with the exception of Europe and North America, and with the exception of 55 plus, increasingly the media consumption is happening on social media. So like I said earlier, where we're seeing more time being spent on like YouTube and TikTok and Facebook, etc. That's not new time that we've invented. That's time that we've taken away from other places, typically TV viewing. But what also plays into this, and I think this is something very interesting, particularly as it pertains to TikTok and YouTube, is that increasingly the consumption of that content is happening on smart TVs through TikTok and YouTube apps that live on a smart TV. So for us as kind of small businesses, etc., and marketers, having the opportunity to take some of that core real estate of media consumption and being able to get into people's living rooms with our content is hugely, hugely powerful. Something that was previously only reserved if you were Nike or Unilever or whatever. I think that's really significant and a really positive message to take off the back of this, and something very important to consider. That's why I'm so bullish on YouTube as a platform for the businesses. That's my take on this.
I just think it's incredible how many different types of media we're all consuming every day right now. It is, when you see it on charts like this, you're kind of slightly in awe of like, how much do we all actually do and need to think about?
Definitely. So completely changing back a little bit. So there's lots of that's a big high level data. We're going to get a bit more platform specific in some of these trends now before we go into the feature updates. Do a quick time check to make sure we're on time. Saw this data, and I think it's actually sets a really clear understanding between our Instagram strategy, posting to the feed versus posting to stories. I get the question quite a lot around should I do stories? Should I do feed posts? And this data, of which you can see linked to here, and we'll share the slides anyway, is really clear, is that if we want to reach more people, feed is the place to do it as opposed to stories. Stories are great for kind of in-depth and more kind of human-centered, deeper interactions. But if we want to reach more people, the feed is the place to do it. So I think there's a real key message that kind of comes through here. So talking some other kind of specific stuff, and I think Luan and I, we talk about this quite a lot around not getting distracted with the new shiny thing, because at the moment there is a lot of new stuff happening, and sometimes it pays to be first mover or whatever if it seems relevant to you, and sometimes it pays to be circumspect, right? Because the media once again whipped up a frenzy around Mastodon, the kind of painting the mass exodus of Twitter as the driving force for people discovering other platforms, of which Mastodon was the main kind of breakout platform of that. And unsurprisingly, like anything that's gone viral goes viral, but virality doesn't equal long-term growth, which is, a message that Luan and I talk about quite a lot. Like, we all want to go viral and have the kind of, the endorphin hit of like, yeah, look at this, isn't this great? But virality very rarely leads to long-term meaningful impact. So I wanted to call that out. But
I spotted this chart as well, and actually there was, I think further down the article that I saw it in, Andy, was actually then points of what happened and where the leaps to Mastodon appeared, and one was Donald Trump related, one was journalists being banned, so almost like when something headliney happened, there was these shifts over. But it is interesting that there's the knee-jerk reactions, but then people do come back. And I think part of the reason for this that I was reading in the articles was that it's not so intuitive to use. And I think there's something around our conversations of, do all the social media platforms look the same, but actually are we familiar enough and know what's happening to stay involved with them? Whereas if something's too different, we kind of go, oh, I don't get it, and I'll go back.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. Mastodon is incredibly niche because it has such a high learning curve.
Yeah.
And the same happened with Clubhouse. When you could plot the same chart for Clubhouse, it still exists. It will still continue to exist as a platform. It might well work for some businesses, but we sometimes fall over ourselves to do the new thing, and it isn't a new thing. Something would be real, right? Doesn't mean it's going to die. Doesn't mean it's never existing as a thing, but be real. I've said this at the start. It's a feature, not a product. And you'll see more tools like TikTok now. You'll see the same thing for Instagram with candid stories. Same darn thing, right? It's a feature. It's not a product. So it just, once again, you could have wasted a lot of time by going, oh, how do we build a Be Real strategy? Sometimes just wait to see how this will grow. Some people say it's useful when if a new platform looks like it's breaking out, to go on there to grab your handle and just this maybe like sign up to have a look, but it doesn't mean it should be part of your strategy. So yeah, I think there's ways to think about it here. Now, on the other side, more positive stories. Snapchat continues to grow at an incredible rate. It's had a bit of a rough ride, but it now seems to have kind of inverted in terms of its growth curve. So throughout the course of 2019, 2020 wasn't doing very well at all, but it's now kind of inverted. Now, I'm going to be the first to stick my hands up and go, I don't spend any time on Snapchat. I declared myself too old for it when it first came out in 2016, and I was like, I don't know it. So I'm curious to know whether anyone on this call spends any time on this or makes it work from a business perspective, but I am not the man to ask on this one.
I have an account more to be curious and to check it out on behalf of my friends that have younger children and wanted to know about it.
Yeah, very true. Pinterest returned to growth, a big winner in the pandemic, unsurprisingly, then diminished and now has returned to growth again. There's a really useful updates around Pinterest that we'll be talking about slightly later on. So yeah, Pinterest growth has returned, and LinkedIn's having a great time at the moment. Obviously, Luan, you're well placed to talk about this. Actually, I'll hand this over to you.
They continue to report record levels of engagement and increasing number of members, which is brilliant. But I will just add that there has been, if you look at the numbers across the globe, there has been some changes in this that perhaps aren't so clear, in that it is restricted in Ukraine and Russia and has been for a year now. And also the version of LinkedIn in Chinese mainland is a lighter careers only version. It is not the full LinkedIn experience because of data governance issues and conversations. But yeah, it keeps continuing to grow, which I think is a good thing. And
this incredible numbers. YouTube Shorts has grown very, very quickly, 50 billion daily views. We'll talk more about YouTube kind of later on, but it's one of those reasons that I basically see it as TikTok 2 years ago. See a lot of growth potential on it. But Luan, I'm going to give everyone a break from and take us through some new updates.
Yeah, so as always, there are changes, some significant, some we could just talk through quite quickly. This one I think is important. Instagram introducing quiet mode, and this is perhaps in recognition of some of those stats we saw about how many hours a day we spend on social media and the struggles I know that many people have, particularly if this is part of your job, to switch off, is that you can go into quiet mode and have some settings so that you're not getting notifications and activity on Instagram. So an important feature, I think, and I would encourage everyone to check their notifications, have some time out, put that phone down. It does you the world of good occasionally.
Love this.
Gifting. One of the themes that we talk about month in, month out is creators and monetization. And again, they're themes today. And this one encompasses both of them, that gifting is about the creators being able to monetize content, and as viewers, we can send virtual gifts in appreciation. I think it's a nice thing to do, and it is, it's all about engagement, isn't it? If you're spending time creating content, you want to know that people are out there looking at it. And I think sometimes, I put my regular user hat on. Do I like things enough? Do I get involved and do that engagement? So I think this is a nice thing. lots of conversations last year, wasn't there, about where Instagram was going, the big backlash led by the Kardashians in the summer about Instagram becoming too much like TikTok and videos. That if you are not following Adam Missouri on Instagram, then do, because every week he goes live, he tells you what's happening on the platform and where they're going. And he has said, I think we were over focused on video in 2022 and pushed ranking too far, showed too many videos and not enough photos. We're balancing things out, going back to photos and what things were like originally, which I think will be very welcome. Lead generation, we do like lead forms. We like to capture data, particularly if we're running this as a business account. So now, if you haven't set this up already and you are trying to use Instagram for business development, building your email list, things like that, go on there and add a lead form. Story memories. If you're a Facebook user, you've been getting memories in your feed for a long time. I'm always intrigued what's going to happen over the next couple of years, because we didn't do a lot for a couple of years to have memories to look back on. I think it's, you know, a nice feature to have this on Instagram, to go back and look at our past stories and be prompted by that. And I think it's often a good piece of content. You know, sometimes you forget about things that you've done, it pops up in a memory, screenshot it and post it, like, can't believe it was a year ago, or things like that.
Exactly. And don't forget that Insta now makes creating reels from stories super easy as well. So so being able to repurpose some of your previous content. I like this calendar view, actually, going back and having a look at that kind of stuff that you've done before. Yeah, nice prompt to maybe reuse and repurpose some stuff.
Yeah. And categorizing content. If we're organizers and planners, we like the opportunity to do that. So being able to add topics, categories to our Reels content as we're uploading it, I think is a good thing, and it's good for users to search through as well.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know yet, like, the impact that this makes on content discovery, but
it will.
Yeah, maybe over time it'll be better. But it's definitely going to make it much easier for Instagram to display the most relevant content to the people that consume something quite similar. Because of course, the important thing with Reels is that this isn't about getting discovered by your follower base, it's about getting discovered beyond that, right? So so that's a really interesting thing to think about. So I really like the idea of topics, and curious to know whether this will end up kind of overtaking hashtags in terms of importance at some point.
That's a whole nother debate, isn't it? But I think it just is reflective of social media becoming bigger than search engines for discovery as well. So perhaps that's the direction we're heading in.
Definitely.
Allowing you to choose with whom you share your reels. We've seen these features on other platforms as well. You know, when you share your content, do you want to share it with everyone, close friends, followers only? Actually, this was, for anyone that remembers, the thing I liked about Google Plus was that opportunity to be able to kind of share your content with certain groups of people. I would just urge caution, and things can be screenshotted on social media. So if you don't want your content to be shown to potentially everyone, then don't be posting it. I know there is these options, but I also do know that screenshots get taken and shared. This is probably the biggest news of the month, I think, in terms of something new. This was announced in the last week, I think, broadcast channels on Instagram. And this is for creators to be doing one-to-many messaging. It's in the US first, and then it's going to be rolled out. Creators will be able to post text, video, photos, voice notes, send messages, and their followers will be able to react and vote in polls. So it's not two-way conversation yet, but I think this is a nice addition, particularly to those people that are using an Instagram for their kind of behind the scenes of their business and come along on our business journey, to be able to add a bit more interaction in a messaging channel. I like this. I think it's going to be interesting.
Definitely agree with that. Really powerful.
Facebook. What's been happening with Facebook? Adding collaborators to Reels. This has been available on Instagram for a while. I'd love to actually know in the chat if anyone's having any successes or challenges around this. I'm personally, in the accounts that I'm involved with for brands, seeing a few challenges in that people are looking to say that they're collaborating with you in the same way that they would tag or mention your product or brand. So getting a lot of collaborator requests when I wouldn't necessarily have considered them a collaborator. I see it as something much more about a creator or an influencer or a partner to work together, rather than using it for mentions. But maybe that's just an understanding and the accounts that I'm working on.
I always think that's probably a bit of a misunderstanding on the part of that individual. But I see this as super powerful for anyone that you're creating content with. Tagging people as a collaborator just basically means that it's going to go to both yours and whomever else's feed. So once again, increasing reach. So I like the idea of that. Useful,
just not to be misused.
Yeah.
Turning Facebook Lives into Reels, again, just making content repurposing easier for everyone. This is a new thing. I'm not seeing so many Facebook Lives anymore. I don't know if anyone's using them or watching them, but a nice easy switch into Reels and stay on the platform. Having them as a draft and a download, again, makes things easier. I think being able to download them will allow the repurposing as well a bit more. So a nice, does what it says on the tin feature.
I realised that I missed a slide here, Luan, because we're going to talk around Meta subscription thing.
We were. So Meta has announced, I think it was it Sunday or Monday, about launching a verified account. So very similar to Twitter Blue, would you pay each month to have a subscription which gives you a verified tick and some additional features which are said to include customer support. I'm not so sure whether that will be available if many people subscribed, or whether people want to pay for it. So
one to
watch.
One of the other things that I did see called out, I mean, it's only testing at the moment, but I've seen this both called out within Twitter Blue as a subscription and in what Meta are planning is increased reach for those that subscribe, which you would think kind of makes sense. If you pay, you'd expect priority treatment. So then it kind of turns all these platforms, Facebook, Insta and Twitter, into quite literally a pay to play platform. And then there was a really interesting comment on a post earlier this week that I saw. It was like, as soon as you pay for something, it changes your relationship with a product, because we all use social media for free, well in the knowledge that if we don't pay for a product, we are the product, right? They sell on it, right? Because we get to use all of this wonderful stuff for free. But when we start to pay for it, that then changes that relationship. We don't, our data should then be ours. So very, very interesting. Did you have a poll to run on this at all?
I did, but I can't get it to work. So I'm interested to know if people are prepared to be paying for verified accounts on Meta and Twitter. Let us know in the chat.
Talking of
Twitter. Twitter Blue, new features, benefits if you pay the subscription, one of which is a 60-minute upload for Blue subscribers.
You watching a 60-minute video on Twitter, Luan?
I would struggle to watch a 60-minute video on at all. I know you're watching a 60-minute live session here, and I appreciate that, but it's not something that I would be scrolling through looking for. Or potentially 4,000 character tweets. This is, again, an option for Twitter Blue. It wouldn't be one long tweet. It would be similar to a thread where you can add additional text and part of a conversation, but to go from 280 to 4,000, I'm not sure why 4,000 or how this might get used from a posting tweets to a consuming tweets angle.
I guess the only thing really here is that if you regularly do Twitter threads, or you like doing like longer form stuff on Twitter threads are, from a user experience perspective, pretty horrible to read, to try and figure out what's going on. This would be the the replacement of them, because a thread was just like a hack together for trying to do, like trying to tell a longer story. But as with, we know this kind of pattern from LinkedIn and other platforms, that if we want people to read what's going on, like this is our tweet would look like this, only the first 280 characters would be shown in the feed, where they show more call to action to see more. So I think the main kind of action here is that if we want to do this, well, one, we've got to pay to Twitter Blue and to subscribe to Twitter Blue, and two, I would suggest through some use of emojis and better formatting, we could draw more attention to this tiny little show more button, because that being hugely useful as it's right now. But I quite like this one, so carry on.
This Blue for Business, where the avatar is square versus circle, I think is one of the features here. I do think it's useful to have different levels of accounts on the platforms and different functionality, which Twitter obviously has never had. I'm not sure what the other features are, Andy, apart from the square avatar on this at the moment.
It works a bit like how LinkedIn works. You know how if you have a bunch of employees on LinkedIn, you can see the content they're sharing and encourage them to share other content because they're affiliated to the business. So that it's the kind of same thing for Twitter, where we both represent, your employees' kind of personal brand, but also your it's easy to tell who you work for as well. So you can kind of cross-post content from your main company profile, so this one on the left, to your employees as well. That's the kind of...
And isn't there a fee per employee that you add to the business account?
I don't know.
That's what they were looking at. Yeah.
Probably, yeah. I think this stuff's still being fleshed out. But yeah, I think for B2Bs, if you're really going in on employee advocacy, it's probably something to consider. But that's, once again, probably quite a niche thing.
Musk, trying to monetize everything he possibly can on the platform, is making changes to advertising as well. We've seen boosts on Facebook for years, so it's now available on Twitter.
Yeah, and I think the important thing, the difference here is that, because like boosting on Facebook has always been like you're boosting your business post typically, right? Whereas this is about a personal profile. So if you want your particular post, let's say you've done something really, really important, launched, I don't know, blog or newsletter or whatever, and you want to get as many eyes on it as possible, these boosts can work quite well for that. It's a very similar approach to TikTok, which TikTok has worked really well from that kind of boosting perspective.
A swipeable feed, it's app only, being able to swipe between home, which is top tweets first, versus latest, which is chronological order. I personally prefer things in time order rather than top, so that I can see things as they're happening. It's a small change, but I think will probably make a difference to users.
Yeah, definitely, especially because however you set your screen last, that's how your experience is. So yeah, I think it's quite useful. Sorry.
And visibility in terms of numbers. This is a change, adding that view count to the bottom of tweets for everyone to see. LinkedIn, few changes to LinkedIn. Testing out posting tips. This is an interesting one, this giving you suggested topics. And this has kind of been happening on company pages for a while in terms of recommended content. I've been getting notifications up in my newsfeed on my personal account for a while around, you might want to share this, you might want to find it interesting. I guess it's just LinkedIn's way of encouraging people to do something. Newsletter discovery is probably a big change. We did see last year, kind of more people having access to newsletters on their personal profile. You do need to switch to a creator account to be able to access this. It used to be that you would get a notification to subscribe, especially if you follow a new person. Now this is going to be on the bottom of people's LinkedIn profiles. So the same as where your groups that you follow, your companies that you follow, newsletters will be in there. So you can find newsletters from other people's profiles. You will be able to, literally find newsletters that you want a bit easier on the platform. So useful from being able to find content, but also if you have a newsletter, to get more eyes and subscribers on it as well. And as we've mentioned earlier, this use of social media as search engine, these SEO options are going to be coming up, not just on newsletters, but I mean, imagine in other areas as well. So if you're creating a newsletter, you've got to give it an SEO title and description.
I love this. It starts to then get social media out of its walled garden that it typically lives in. So your newsletter can be discoverable through Google search, which is really cool. So I love
that. And yeah, you know, layoffs. We know that there is a lot of layoffs right now. If anyone has been affected and would like some support, you know, our messages are always open. I'm sure yours are, Andy. People are moving to LinkedIn to find new jobs, to utilize their networks, to find their next play, their next activity. Traffic is up, engagement is up, so it continues to be a valuable platform.
Right then,
TikTok.
Let's I'll dive into the last two social networks. Today's update, quick time check, see how we're doing.
We're good.
Where there's any questions in the chat we need to address, then let's do
it.
Look. All right, TikTok are trying to improve their live engagement experience. So lives on TikTok remain a thing of focus for TikTok in particular. So if anyone's into having a little draw and guess game, you can do that on TikTok now. It feels quite niche unless you're an artist, but never mind. But it's all of those. The reason it's important to kind of bring up is because the focus that TikTok continues to put on live streams is really important to call out. And that it's an area that particularly in TikTok's parent company, Douyin in China, which is obviously a huge app, even bigger than TikTok, you know, live streams is like the primary use of that as a platform. So TikTok continues to push us out. So if live streams for you, TikTok could be a really useful place for it. Similar to Luan spoke about with Facebook Reels, so we can now save them. We can now save them without watermarks as well and edit them too. So because we're getting a lot more video editing controls and capabilities natively on, like, you know, Insta Reels, Facebook Reels, and on TikTok and YouTube Shorts as well, there's a lot of editing tools. So it becomes really important to be able to save our posts and also be able to edit them afterwards as well. If we've made an error, we do not want to be deleting it and redoing it again. So yeah, some really useful things. But I think the key call out is that TikTok's editing capabilities, anyone's created on TikTok, is super easy to create quite a cool looking video. And historically, it's been a challenge to repurpose that on other platforms because of the watermark. So now we can save things without a watermark, which is useful. TikTok SEO trick. I really like this. I mean, it's not really a trick. It's just kind of, if you do SEO, this is pretty obvious stuff. But, you know, Luan, you made this distinction earlier, that increasingly people are going to social to search rather than using Google. And that is one of the most important dynamic shifts in our industry, right? It's absolutely huge. So that now means that platforms like TikTok and others as well, increasingly, and Instagram are doing this too, increasingly trying to optimize for search. So not only do people discover content in the feed, which we all know, but they're discovering content through search. And it's an element that we don't often think about as part of our social media strategies, because we think about, like, what's engaging, entertaining content that we want to capture in the feed and the right hashtags to use. But we also need to be thinking about, how do we optimize for social SEO? So, and it's that I make that sound more complex than it actually is, because here, this is an example on TikTok. What TikTok is now doing is that if you search something, Starbucks in this example, it gives all the most recently searched terms linked to that, just in the same way that Google does as well, like users also searched for. So including those keywords in our content becomes crucial to making sure our content is seen and discovered. And we're seeing the same things play out, like I said, on Instagram, with more location tagging that's coming to it. And also the ability, you know, Insta has massively improved search capabilities because more people are searching. So if they're looking for, you know, coffee shop near them, they're typically going to Insta and TikTok first. So we need to make sure we're optimized for that. But even if we're not in kind of like B2C land, in B2B, we can apply the same logic to to LinkedIn as well. Just as, you know, you were talking about, Luan, about, you know, SEO titles for our newsletters. The same applies for, if I go back a couple of slides, actually, because I think this is relevant, you know, for things like, what do we talk about? Those hashtags, those categories and the things we talk about, that's so fundamental to having our profile appear in search, because more and more people are using the search functions in all of the social networks. Long narrative from me, but I think it's a really important thing. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Luan.
Just an agreement, you know, the conversations that I've been having, you know, the first 6 weeks of the year are, we need a mind shift from social being the last part of a campaign of, oh, we need to post about this, to spending as much time on planning and SEO and keywords, not in terms of it turning it into a dark art, but just saying that if you and your colleagues and your teams start recognizing that this is about search now, not just social and posting, it's a bit of a game changer.
Definitely agree with that. TikTok carousels are doing very well at the moment. So I like this because it means that it makes TikTok more accessible to others that are just wanting to do video only. This screenshot shows you how you can do it. Actually, it took me a while to figure out actually how to do it, because it's not like an option. So it's only when you press upload and you select multiple photos from your phone does it work. But creators are reporting really good results as a result of using carousels. Over to YouTube. Improving analytics again to help us understand where subscribers are coming from. Are they coming from the longer form feed content, or are they coming from shorts? But of course, you know, making lots of updates to shorts, which is, you know, adding the ability to add a thumbnail and a preview to it, which makes sense. And also, like we said, from an SEO perspective, add a location to your videos, so it can become more location specific and be found more within search on YouTube. And that means we have made it with some time to spare, which is shock horror. 6 things to take away real quick. Social media, absolutely huge. 3 big takeaways: record levels of growth. Now 60% of society use it. More people are spending more time on platforms and spending more time across multiple platforms too. So social media, incredibly significant. 2, Facebook investing heavily in Reels. And in fact, lots of people are starting to report really good organic growth on Facebook, which we haven't said this for a long time, as a result of using Reels. And as Luan, you said earlier, like, groups remain incredibly strong on Facebook too. Already called it out, but YouTube, particularly shorts, represent a really good opportunity for small business. Like I said, it's like TikTok a couple of years ago. So there's really good potential there. LinkedIn's growth, organic reach, you know, record levels of user engagement and record user numbers. And there's good SEO value in it. So LinkedIn is emerging as quite a strong, well, continues to be a really strong platform. Yeah, Twitter, I should add here, both Instagram and Facebook are trying to orientate towards a pay-to-play model. We can't do anything with that, nor should we do anything with that right now, but that's definitely a really interesting thread to keep an eye on, to, you know, how that evolves. So we'll see how that plays out. And then Insta, I think Insta is actually, after a bit of kind of wonky last 6 months, it's starting to look like re-emerging as a really strong platform, a refocus on photos, as Luan spoke through, and also some of the things like broadcast channels. There's more kind of group and community orientated stuff like we spoke about last month that's coming to the platform. So it appears to be much stronger. And that's it.
We've got some great stuff in the chat. Observations, a couple of questions around the Instagram broadcast channels and what that means, and how do we define creator. I believe that it's when you have a creator account, because when you change, you know, on Instagram, you can have a personal account, a business account, or a creator account. So my guess, without actually trying it, would be you need a creator account to be part of those extra features in the broadcast channel.
Yeah, I mean, there is a link to request early access to it. It's not available. It's literally a request.
US first as well, isn't it?
It's super early days, but if you just Google search Instagram broadcast channel, you should see an opportunity to try and get on the early access list. But definitely something to start thinking about right now.
Yeah. I'm going to share in the chat the link to next month, which, as I said at the beginning, but in case you missed it, next month is part of a longer event with other speakers. It is still free to attend. We have 4 or 5 different speakers, different topics to go through, but I will just go back to the chat. Some interesting comments around verification and paying. Some are happy to pay for the verification for extra reach and the features. Tom, not surprised that you have commented saying, what will the perception be? How will we perceive people that we can see are paying for accounts versus perhaps those that aren't paying for the accounts? That's going to be interesting as well. I would say what's going to be the biggest challenge is having to go and ask for budget to pay for a subscription to these accounts that we have used for free for many years. So I think, as we talked about at Be Real and Clubhouse, it is still early days, and you need to make that decision whether to be an early adopter or perhaps to watch what's happening for a bit longer. Definitely.
I'm going to pick on a question from our friend Aoife.
Yes.
So, hey Aoife. Yeah, YouTube Shorts question. Any advice for repurposing content across LinkedIn, Shorts and TikTok? Record the video in TikTok and then edit? What should we do? So I think it's a good question, because given what TikTok has just released and the fact that you can download videos without a watermark, we can potentially simplify our workflow here. TikTok has the best video editing tools out of all of the native platforms, because currently because I do exactly the same thing. I do reel oriented content put across multiple different platforms, but I use a separate video editing tool to make it happen. But I won't need to do that once, well now, not once.
Now.
Yeah, I can edit straight in TikTok, add all my overlays that I want, add my captions and subtitles, etc., and just download it and repurpose it across all the different platforms. So yeah, I would agree with you, Aoife.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's Andy, another thank you for putting the slide deck together. Doing these together every month is just a joy, and thank you to everyone that joins us, and hope to see you next month.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.